My guest today is one of the leading performance directors in video games, whose career spans theatre, film, animation, and interactive entertainment. After starting out in the New York theatre scene, he worked in animation on Johnny Bravo, the Powerpuff Girls, and the Woody Woodpecker Show, then moved into video games at a pivotal moment in the industry's evolution. For the past 2 decades, he has shaped performances for Chronicles of Riddick, Escape from Butcher Bay, Battlefield, Resident Evil 2, Star Wars, Jedi, Fallen Order and Survivor, and Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. BAFTA nominated for his work on Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus, he now shares his experience in a new book, The Complete Guide to Video Game Performance Directing. Welcome, Tom Keegan.
Hello, Simon. Great to be with you.
Yeah, great to see you, Tom. So, let's start by talking about your book. What inspired you to write this book now at this point in your career?
Well, it started during the pandemic. One of my advisors was always like, you should write a book. And I just said, nobody reads books anymore. Come on. Saying that to you, an author. Anyway, I decided, it's time because there isn't a lot of production going on. So I started writing the book, and I based it off of a presentation that I used to give to developers called How to Talk to an Actor. And I kind of based it on how actors are trained. And if you understand how actors are trained, you know what to tell them and what not to tell them. And
can you give an example?
Well, people will say, to the actor, they'll be like, and the character was kicked by a eunuch when they were 12, and, they have 17 arms, and because the queen of the land has gone back. So there's a subtitle to my book called Place, Time, Action. And so I say, what the actor needs to know is this, PTA, very simple, place. Where is this scene? Where is this moment located? Time, why now, or what just happened? And action is, what does this character want to accomplish, or how do they want to affect the other character in the scene? And if you can give those things as a minimum, that's all the actor needs. Anything else, sure, it's great to know. I get sent, when we're casting, I get sent these bios that are 6 pages long. And of course, I love that someone has thought of that. But then I'm going to boil that down in the moment. I'm going to say to the actor, you're on a mountaintop having just escaped from a Chinese prison. And, you've got to get your wounded comrade to the safe house. Go.
And so it's written then, from the sounds of things, specifically for game developers rather than actors or directors or students, or is there something everyone can get from it?
I think everyone can get something for it. I mean, the point of view is directors, right? It's performance directing. Now, it's very applicable to film, it's applicable to theater, and it's a huge help to actors. So I teach classes in acting and directing, and I like to create a community of actors and directors together because one cannot work without the other. And most directors are terrified of the actors. And also, they don't know how to do the homework. And also, actors don't know how to do the homework. So if actors know what directors need to know, or what questions to ask directors, then they're going to be ahead of the game. Another thing, a lot of sort of short classes that I teach is about how to decode video game audition sites, right? So most of the time, you're not getting the PTA from the developers for a lot of reasons, mostly for security. The first thing I start with is, what is the point of this in the game, right? It's usually either look over there, that looks bad, or look over there, that looks good, right? It's usually mission briefing. Okay, we've got to, go down and, run across the battlefield and meet up at, checkpoint Charlie, and then regroup. It's join my team, right? I'm the best. Oh, those guys suck. Or sort of generally to kind of set the tone of the thing, right? Along with look over there, that looks bad. So it'll be like, I hear tell there's a cache of weapons and food round here somewhere. Legend has it. you know. And so the player automatically goes, okay, look for a cache of weapons and food.
Mm-hmm. Right. Got it. Okay, amazing. And what do you think, how do you work on the other side of things? I mean, obviously your advice there is to directors and game developers. What about when you get an actor coming in from, say, the world of film or television who's working on a video game for the first time? What advice do you give them?
Yeah, totally. I give a lot of advice about what the mechanisms of performance capture or, doing a game in the booth look like, right? Most people are terrified that they don't know how to do performance capture, but honestly, I've worked with thousands of actors. They get in the suit. After about an hour or two, they've dealt with it, right? But it is very physical. It is motion capture, so they have to move, which is kind of the opposite of working on film or television, where they don't want you to move that much, especially in a close-up. But in performance capture, in a close-up, I always tell actors, if you are completely still, it's like a Prius at a stop sign. It seems dead. It seems like it's off, right? We've all been in those electric vehicles or even electric trams, and you're like, is this thing on? Are we stuck here? And then it starts up again. So you always have to have a little bit of life. You always have to have a little breath. You always have to have a bit of data coming from your face in some way. And for directors, I tell them, because directors are also terrified of actors, right? And they're hoping, it's a sad truth, that the majority of people, of very talented people in game development who are responsible for the acting have little to no training in drama.
Right.
Right? My book is like, this is your drama school, if you never went. There's a chapter on the history of the Stanislavski method and how it became method acting and how it became the Meisner technique and how psychological realism, became the desired gold standard. And then it's all about casting. It's all about directing performance capture. It's all about directing in the booth. In the booth, this is the thing that actors and directors are terrified if they've never done a game. It's the efforts, right? It's going, jumping up, jump down. Right? I'm always like, I'm going to live my life like a video game character, right? I make this joke of like, give me the sound of eating a potato chip, right? You pick it up. And a game is filled with this.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And people are terrified. I'm working on one game right now where they've hired me just to take the actors through the efforts. And of course I have my own shorthand about it. And in the book I have a whole chapter on efforts and what prompts to give them. And I'm also doing an audiobook of it. And in the audiobook I actually make the sounds.
I mean, it sounds from what you've been saying there that very often your role is to be the kind of bridge between the actors and the developers and the studios. I suppose you're the one outside the booth and trying to translate between these two groups.
Absolutely. And that's something that directors from film and theater may not quite grasp, that you are serving the developers. You're there to help them translate their vision. You can have a part in that vision and you can contribute to that vision. But at the end of the day, it's the developer's vision and they've been working on it for years, unless you're on the team. And if you're on the team and you're directing, even better that you can't move a table without checking the 3 departments to see, is that going to affect something in the game, in the production?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I've had quite a few voice actors from video games on the show before, and I'm very aware that in the last 18 months, 2 years, there's been a lot of attention on how actors in games are treated, from pay to protections around AI, and of course the SAG-AFTRA strikes that went on for a very long time, and I believe are now finished. Mm-hmm. Did you see those strikes shift the conversation in your day-to-day work? How developers and publishers listen to each other?
I think so, but that those conversations aren't happening outside of a general cultural conversation around AI and the role of content creation and artists in content creation.
Right.
And creators are horribly at danger, horribly. Everything from artists to lighting people, and then all the subsidiary jobs and things that go along with that. My book is kind of a cry against AI actors. I think the human being is going to be cheaper in the long run. They already have all the data. You just have to kind of tune it a little to bring it out.
Right. Okay.
People go, won't you be looking forward to, working with AI actors? And I'm like, no, because I'm going to have to then make every single choice, among the thousands and thousands and thousands of, choices that are possible in every single moment. And it's going to be incredibly overwhelming. Or the AI is going to make that choice, and that's going to become some, really flattened out or stereotyped idea of humanity.
Right. It sounds from that you quite enjoy then leaving a little bit of latitude for the actor to, to make a choice, like you say. So you're not dictating what you need them to be doing. How do you give an instruction then, and while leaving enough room for them to be themselves and bring their own experience and skill?
The developer has to, or the director, right, has to understand the bones of the drama. And the bones of the drama are in the place-time action, right? Is knowing like what are the circumstances and what does this character want, and how have you created the scene, putting, characters going head to head with their actions, right? And is there enough conflict in their actions? And conflict isn't always an argument. People mistake it and they go like they should be screaming at each other. Conflict is like people in a three-legged race who are, one leg is tied to the other leg, and they're just going at slightly different rhythms. They're trying to accomplish the same thing, but in different ways. That's conflict. You always have to have some of that, some friction of some kind, in order to bring the scene alive. I just was watching something on TikTok with the famous acting teacher Uta Hagen talking in an acting class, and she's like, "You can't make choices. If the actions are too much the same, the scene's going to be boring. It's going to be dead." And I agree with that, actually. So the director's thing is to give the actors the circumstances and set them up so that friction is there, and then let them do the work. They're a collaborator. They're not a floor polishing machine that you rented for a day or 4 hours. They're a collaborator. A lot of times I tell developers, think about when you're bringing someone new on your team. You bring them in, you show them everything, you show them around, you show them where the bathroom is, you show them the project, you show them the iterations of the project. You bring an actor in, and you're like, "Hi, get in the seat, now act."
You've worked on some of the biggest series in video games: Battlefield, Resident Evil, Star Wars, and so on. Have you got an example of where an actor has made a choice that surprised you and delighted you as well, that felt like the right one?
That is a really good question. I think that I talk about this scene sometimes in Star Wars Jedi, the first one, Fallen Order, and there was it always moves me when I think about this scene that between Seer, who is the former Jedi, who becomes kind of the mentor to the main character, and the evil one, Trilla, who turns out was her former Padawan, and they had this scene where Seer's action in the whole thing is to get redemption in some way. Spoiler alert. And when she has this confrontation with Trilla, with her former Padawan, who Seer gave up to Darth Vader, right? And they have this confrontation. And the confrontation, Deborah Seer, the one wanting redemption, is like, she was sobbing. I mean, she's Deborah Wilson. She's been in almost everything I've done, and she was down on her knees and sobbing. And the cold Trilla was just not moved. I was like, is she making you feel like forgiving her? And she was like, no. Elizabeth Crujon, another amazing actor. And she was like, no. And I'm like, okay. It's the one thing I always ask actors. They're like, are they actually having any effect on you at all in the scene? And if they're like, well, not really. I could act it, but no, not really. I'm like, okay, well, you have to go back to work.
Were they both in the booth at the same time?
No, it was in performance capture.
Oh, in performance capture, right.
So it's in body as well, right? So I took Deborah aside. I'm like, Deborah, you're taking up all the room. She can't have any emotion with all your sobbing. I was like, just hold it back. Just stay really calm and see if you can provoke the emotion in her. Just a simple, I'm sorry.
It's over, Trilla.
Nothing is ever truly over.
This fight is over. I know the darkness that is eating you up inside, and every day we choose to either feed it or fight it.
It's too late, sir.
No, it's not. I know the choices that I made took all your choices away, and I have failed you, Trilla. I failed you. And I am so very sorry.
And it suddenly worked. It was incredible. It was an incredible scene.
I've carried so much hate for you.
And as soon as the scene was over, we took a little break. I suddenly heard this wailing that both of them were just like over in a corner, like sobbing, holding each other. Right. And it was such a powerful moment of people, of actors really kind of getting down to it and feeling what it is to like hold something back and kind of craft it as a director in that way. It was incredibly satisfying to me to see like, oh yeah, this works.
Wow. Amazing story. Okay then, Tom. So we've headed down to the premise of the podcast. I've asked you to pick the 5 video games you'd like to put on your ideal fictional games machine. We're going back to 2012 for your first game. So not that long ago, really, 13 years. This is a PlayStation game. Tell us, what's the game and why do you love it, Tom?
Long time ago in video game years. Though,
Yeah, true.
right?
Yeah.
Around that time, my daughter was about 8. And I had read somewhere that, there still is, I think, but even then there was more of a generation gap around video games between older people and kids, right, and young children. And I had seen some advice somewhere, if you really want to connect with your kid, play a game with them. Even if you're not a gamer, play a game with them, right? And here I am, like, working in video games. And my daughter liked to do, like kind of handheld games and stuff like that. And so I was like, let's play this game Journey. And so we played. It was just like the exact experience I always want to have and almost never have, which is like we could play the whole thing in 3 hours on a Sunday afternoon together, father and daughter, work on it together. And it was, around one of the first sort of uncovering games, right, where you uncovering stuff. And then there's this magical moment at the end of it. You know, you have little friends seem to come over and help you during it. And at the end of it, you realize like there's other people here and they've been kind of guiding you all along. And, you know, you can interact with them and now you can help someone. And it just was such an experience of, you know, togetherness and being alone and finding community. And that's like the point of the game in a way, you know, and it was really incredibly effective. And, you know, it just really shows you what a game can be.
Yeah, so we should clarify that the people that help you along the way, you realize at the end were real human beings playing their version of the game wherever they live over the internet.
Yes, and they already had finished it once.
Right,
yeah. And they're allowed to come in and help you out.
Yeah, it's so lovely, isn't it? And it was so surprising, wasn't it? Because we're so used to online video games being, you know, everyone's in a lobby and, you know, being rude to each other. It was like the complete antithesis of that, wasn't it?
Exactly, and you don't want to, you know, you don't want to expose your kid to that. It just was really a lovely and moving experience. So I just say that was, you know, and I've read that, you know, people don't feel that way. You know, it's changed now, the view of the game in terms of like where gaming has gone. But I still think it can be a wonderful experience for, you know, to find a game that you play with your kid together for a parent.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right, well, let's come to your story then, Tom. So tell us, what was life like when you were a kid? Were you in California or somewhere else?
No, I'm from New York originally. And although I live in California now, but I was a very, very imaginative young child. I think a handful from my parents. I mean, I'd just say like I was born to be a performer or in theater or in showbiz. I mean, it just came out that way. And I will say that my father was a very frustrated amateur actor and singer. You know, we had this kind of built-in conflict our whole lives of like, you know, he'd say, well, you enjoy it now, but you'll be behind the desk. Or,
oh, no.
Yeah, you'll, you'll see. Oh, you have money now. You're going to spend it all. I know it. Oh, what are you doing? What are you doing with your life?
So he's kind of taking out his own disappointments on you, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And it was interesting though because some years ago, but my father's passed away now. But some years ago, I did a convention. I was offered to do a convention. I don't really, you know, I'm not an actor, and I don't have a fan base or anything like that. Like actors do, right? But I was invited to do this convention called MomoCon in Atlanta, and my father was living near there. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to do it, and I'll get to see my dad. And I invited him up to the convention, and I did like a presentation at the convention, like about, you know, motion capture and video games. My father came to the thing, and it was really one of those, you know, turning points in life. After all of that, my father looked at me and he was like, now I understand what you do. And then shortly after that, he had a massive stroke and was never the same. So it was like, I got a major thing from him. I got a bit of
resolution.
Yeah. But when I was in, I always wanted to be an actor. I did school plays, and I also like computers. Like when I was a kid, a computer was the size of a room. But I took a computer programming class, and I really liked it. It was like, you know, give the computer instructions to make a sandwich or something like that, right? And do the flow chart. And I feel like that really, you know, doing that and having a sort of a knack for that really set me up in some strange way for what I'm doing today.
Right, because you were comfortable around technology, you mean?
Yeah, because I was comfortable around technology, and it's almost like someone who learned film editing by splicing, you know, actual physical film together. And I used to make films and stuff like that. I made my own movies. I did splice the film. I experimented with media. My cousin and I did radio plays. We would pretend to have a newsroom. And we did a hack. My cousin's now, his name is Chris Conley. He's kind of a famous journalist. He was the editor of Rolling Stone at one point, and he does the red carpet at the Oscars and stuff like that. And he lived in New York City, and I lived in the suburbs at that point. And we invented this mystery writer called Aaron Go Bra, and we thought it was hilarious because we were 13 and had the word bra in it. Anyway, we called the Associated Press, the Wire Press, and we made up these titles, and we were really ironic, and we understood it. The most boring, mundane titles like Murder in the Hallway and Murder Around the Clock. And we called up the wire service and we said, this is Connolly Funeral Home. We used our deep teenage voices, and we said, Anita Go Bra has died, author of Murder in the Hallway, Murder Around the Clock, and she'll be interred here at the funeral home. And they called back to check, and the parents were upstairs, and they answered the phone, hello, and we're like, we got it. Yes, we're confirming. We got it published in the New York Post.
No way.
We got the obituary published. So we were sort of, early hackers.
Right. Yeah. Cool. I guess that kind of experience shows you that when you, traverse into the adult world like that, when you're so young, it shows you that kind of anything's possible, right?
Yeah. You just want to see how far you can get.
Yeah. So good. And so, yeah, what did you study? You obviously have an appetite
Drama.
for...
Yeah, I studied drama.
And you wanted to be an actor?
I wanted to be an actor, but about halfway through drama school, I sort of went, I might major in directing because I really do like directing. And then I got, after college, it's really hard to be an actor. So I kind of got into the performance art world in New York, doing kind of queer performance art with my partner, who's now my husband. And that was a very vibrant scene.
Mm-hmm.
And it was movement, visuals, kind of non-linear writing. So, I can kind of see how all that stuff led to being involved in video games, right? Because you have characters, but it's non-linear. You're telling stories in various ways. You have a lot of fringe characters that have their own sense of morality. I mean, it's a really exciting world. Whereas in the commercial acting world, maybe you get a TV show, you're playing a barista, or you're doing parking, or you're the cute boyfriend, or, you're the psychiatrist. Unless you're really like an incredible looking movie star, right? You're going to have kind of mundane roles.
Right. Yeah.
So video games give you the most interesting and amazing roles and the most amazing stories and creatures to direct.
Yeah, and what's, you mentioned doing a little bit of programming on those big PDP-1, huge mainframe computers, but, games weren't really coming along until the mid to late 70s, early 80s. So what, did they impact you at all in New York? Do you remember what the first video game was that you played?
I think it was Tetris, like so many people.
Yeah.
It's not really a video game, but it's a game.
Tetris,
play
definitely.
Is play.
Yeah.
Right? Play is play. Whether you're playing cards, whether you're playing a board game. I even co-produced a DVD board game.
Oh, you did?
Yes. And when, you were using the DVD as a programming device, and instead of, you'd spin the thing with the DVD player, with the DVD, and it would tell you how many moves you could get, and you're on the board and you go dun dun dun, and then you have to play a certain thing, and then you click it, and there's been so many iterations of things.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, Tom, let's come to your second game, and then we'll pick up the story of you directing in New York. So yeah, this is from 2013. Definitely one of those games that blends interactivity with cinematic storytelling. Tell us, what's the game and why'd you love it?
Okay, so the game is The Last of Us. I picked this game because this was the first game that I played And I will confess, I didn't play that much of it because it was so moving to me. It's like, I can't go there again tonight. I just can't. Neil, the creator of it.
Neil Druckmann.
Yeah, Neil Druckmann called me up, and we both had studied with this directing teacher named Judith Weston. And he said, I'd like to talk to you about casting my game. And I said, okay, well, let's have lunch, right? It's always good to meet people. And he's like, I work for Naughty Dog. And I knew Naughty Dog a little bit from the animation world. And so we had lunch, and he was telling me about The Last of Us. And I was like, casting a game to me is sort of like planning someone else's wedding. I just don't understand the point of it. If I'm not directing it, it's difficult. I've done it a few times, so it's not my jam. But I was like, you should be involved in the casting. You're going to direct it, right? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, so that, being involved in the casting is part of the directing, because when you have callbacks with people and you direct them, you get a chance to try on and experiment with some stuff and lay a groundwork that then you can pick up when they get the role. Of course, he did that. He went on. It was an amazing game. And when I started playing the game, I was like, the acting in this is so good. This is what I want. This is what I want in a game. This is it. This shows me the possibilities. And I will say it definitely influenced me in terms of, going for that level of quality. And of course, it's a small world that comes around. Then I worked with Troy Baker on Indiana Jones and the Great Circle.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. So, everything feels like there's a thread and a continuity to all of life in some way.
All right, well, let's pick up your story again, Tom. So you were studying drama, and then you decided that you would like to try out directing. So, tell me, what was the first play you directed in the New York theater scene? Do you remember that moment?
It was more original material.
Right.
It was more directing original material and directing other people in original material. But in college, I directed a Sam Shepard short play. I think it was called, I can't even remember what it was called, but it had a guy in a bathtub. And the actor, I had the perfect actor for it. And then he had a scheduling conflict. And it was long, but he's giving these long monologues. And it was the first time then I used technology, because then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to have him record the monologues, and then we'll play it while he's in the bathtub. I was completely happy with it. And I got to experiment with a lot of stuff, like pre-performance art stuff. So I created an original piece called Hesse Dreams, because I was really into the German author Hermann Hesse. And so I created kind of Robert Wilson-esque, the stage director, Robert Wilson, would do these 12-hour-long, very heavily visual Einstein on the Beach type productions. And so I got to kind of work with that. And so then when I got into creating original material, I felt like I was free. Also, I really got into movement in college. I had been an actor, but I got into movement, and I actually saw a dance company when I was 17. I'd never seen anything like it. And I was like, oh my God, I got to do that. But I couldn't do it till I left home, because my family would never, ever give me permission to move around like that.
Oh, really? Were they strict on that side of things as well?
Well, my father was an athlete, had been an athlete. And this is another interesting thing about my relationship with my father, that my father was a track star. And that's a moving through space thing. But I think he felt frustrated as All-American. He wasn't like a ball guy. And so he wanted me desperately to be a ball guy. Well, guess what? I'm a moving through space person.
Right.
I'm a moving through space athlete. I love skiing. I love running. I love swimming. I love yoga. I love dance. I love anything where you're moving around. But I had sworn off it by that point, because my father was the coach of the teams, and I was the worst one. It was a classic. I'm the backbench son who can't fucking catch or throw a ball. So I'd sworn off athletics, but when I saw dance, I was like, there's a possible world of movement. And I got into mime and physical theater as well. So again, all these things ended up coming together for me in video games, right? It's just like a long, long arc that has worked out beautifully.
And then it seems like quite a long jump then from these original plays and pieces of writing that you were staging to then working on, say, the Woody Woodpecker Show. Tell me, how did that transition happen?
I was working, I had a friend who had a little animation company, and they needed somebody to be the computer guy in the days when you could be the computer guy if you knew how to work it. I joined as the computer guy, and because I knew drama and all of that, so I became like the story guy too. And then they ran out of money, but one of the partners there had a girlfriend working at Hanna Barbera in TV development. So he was like, and her assistant had quit, and he said, "Do you want the job?" And I was like, "I'll go check it out." And we got along great. I loved being there. It was the early days of Cartoon Network, and we were doing all these stories and putting together the story Bibles, and we were working in the Jetsons building. And it was so cool. And then it all ended because they got bought by Time Warner and everybody got fired. And so then we went to Universal. Nothing was going on there. Woody Woodpecker. And I saw an ad in the Hollywood Reporter, and I talk about this a little bit in my book, how, it was this ad for kids' educational software company. And I went and interviewed, and it seemed cool. And a friend said, I think that CD-ROM thing's going to turn out to be something. So I was like, what the hell? I went with it. And here I am. I stuck with it. I was doing kids stuff, and then I got into performance capture because we had a dance game. So I knew dance, right? And we had to it was going to be the first motion capture thing I had done. We had the little pieces of movement that got put together that you could win and make a movement sequence. And I completely understood from my early days in programming, like how that could work. And then the early forerunners of machine games called me up, and we had done the Chronicles of Riddick games together. And they said, we're going to do this game called The Darkness, and we're going to do something called vocap. We're going to do motion capture and voice together. And I was like, I've done it. I had done one. Like most people in computer gaming, right? If you had a little bit of experience with it in the early days, right, you could get the job, right? So I had done one, and I was like, and they said, well, it's not with your company. I was like, I'm leaving. And that was this game called The Darkness.
Yeah, I remember it well. Yeah.
One of the first performance capture games. And then I just decided I'm going to pursue this. I'm not going to do movies. I'm doing a little theater on the side, but I'm just going to run with this thing because it's so much fun.
I just quickly wanted to ask you about the Powerpuff Girls. Were you involved in recording the voices for the cartoon of that, or something else?
Not.
Right.
I was not. I was more involved in the story end, creating what they call the Bibles. In a cartoon show, they have this thing called the Bible, which is kind of a packet of stuff with the signature colors. It has the bios of the characters. It has kind of the rules of the world. So if a new writer comes on, they give them the Bible. If a new animator comes on, they're kind of like, these are the basic rules of the world.
Amazing. Such a great show, that one. And
such a great show.
Such an enjoyable world as well. So it must have been a laugh working on that.
There was it was really fun. There was this project. I just cringe when I say this project that came across my desk called SpongeBob Underpants. And I looked at this thing, and I remember going, this is the stupidest idea I have ever seen in my entire life. A sponge that talks, living under the world. Pass.
Oops.
Yeah. But it was all it was all in the production. The genius of it was in the writing. I mean, that one of the greatest shows ever, SpongeBob, hilarious, incredible acting, really funny stories.
All right, Tom, let's come to your third game. So we're going to 2016 for this. I believe this game you worked on as a cinematic performance director. So Yeah, tell us, what's the game?
The game is Battlefield 1. So I had already worked on Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4. And Battlefield 4, which is still in existence, and I think is one of the most successful games ever. The campaign was a disaster because there was a long setup, and then there was a level on which you really got the meat of the story and what was behind the story. And then towards the end of production, they were behind on man hours and production, and they cut that level of the story, the entire level of the story. They came to me like a month before release, and they were like, "Can you help us figure out a line that can sum that whole thing up?" I was like, oh my God. So then they changed their tactics, their production tactics, and they said, we're going to do this World War I game, and we're going to do it like chapters so that if we have to cut a level, it won't break the story. It was a real turning point. Also because no one had really, Stefan Strandberg, who was kind of one of the geniuses behind it, he had been an audio person for Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4, but he always had this vision to do a World War I game. And I remember at the time, an actor I was working with who worked on Call of Duty, Battlefield and Call of Duty were always head to head, was trying to get info from me, and was like, can you just tell me one thing about it? I was like, no, sorry, man. He was like, is it about outer space? I was like, I can't say. Nah. And all this time I'm thinking like, oh my God, they're going to be so surprised. And one of the great things about it was all these, famous battles from World War I. It was such a lesson in history for me. I had no idea. I knew how bad World War II was, but I had no idea that World War I was way worse in some instances than World War II, even though the horrors of the Holocaust, happened in World War II, but millions and millions of people died in World War I. It was the change over from the old world to the industrial world. And really, World War I and World War II are like the same war, just continued, later for different reasons, but all the same seeds. It was horrifying and amazing to kind of dig into what caused the war, what the battles were, the technology, the weapons, how the tanks hadn't been ever used before, the industrialization of war and killing, and the destruction that it could wreak on the physical world. So it was quite profound to work on that, and I know that people still play Battlefield 1 and also love the stories. So it was kind of a redemption after Battlefield 4 story fell apart. Like these are great stories. These are really profound stories.
Can I just ask, how did you just try and fix that Battlefield 4, that impossible ask that you were given?
I came up with some terrible line, like
it was all a dream.
Kenneth Williams said something to Jessica Vann, like it was all about her family and this character, this presidential candidate in China, as if they were going to disrupt elections. I kept saying, have any of you really studied the political situation in that country? And I don't know, it was some pithy line. It didn't work. It didn't. And also it was shouted over the sound of like they're in an open Jeep.
Right.
You're driving in an open Jeep. And in fact, one of the developers that I worked with on Battlefield 1 was working for another company then, and he even messaged me and he was like, what the hell happened with Battlefield 4? All of us who worked on it were like suicidal when it came out. Because, I mean, we had put our heart and soul into it. We really had. I mean, I write a little bit about this in my book, about how you really cannot control the results. You just have to do the work for the love of it. You know, any creative person, especially in games, you don't know how it's going to land.
Yeah, and you do the best you can, you know, and on these huge, vast projects with multi-million-dollar budgets and armies of workers on it, it can be very hard to, you've got no control, have you?
Yes, it really is. You just have to surrender and go, well, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, right?
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask you about a project that really did go very, very well and unexpectedly, which was Chronicles of Riddick, Escape from Butcher Bay, which was a video game tie-in to a movie that came out. And at that time, sort of video game adaptations of movies were very much looked down on. They were typically quite bad. And this was the absolute opposite of that. It was an amazing game that came out of nowhere. So, yeah, at what point did you know it was going to be good?
Never knew that it was going to be good. But I got along so well with the developers. So well. The movie part was so difficult. I mean, it was so difficult.
How do you mean?
You know, dealing with a recalcitrant star and on-set tensions and working with...
Oh, so it was quite involved with the movie production as, you know, the video game team were involved, were they?
Well, I mean, we had Vin Diesel and we had a couple of the people. We had there was one person from it, and getting information about it, about the film, they brought me over and sort of showed me around, but it was like I wasn't allowed to reach directly out to the filmmakers, even though I had a conduit. Stuff had to come to me. It was like, could I just cut through and call? And I had Vin's assistant, because Vin's company was very involved in it, right? And I could reach out to Vin's assistant, just call him up and go, hey man, what's this? You know, what did you mean by this? And it just was very difficult. But working with the Swedes, with the main writers are the same writers from Wolfenstein and the same writers from Indiana Jones.
Right, I didn't know that.
Same team, and I've worked with them now ever since then. And so the ideas were incredible, but there was like so many issues. Like I remember there was a whole thing like in the dark, when he's in the dark.
Yes.
Right. And they were like, he's supposed to be naked. And then in the Americans were like, he can't be naked. Can't show a penis. Vin's not happy with his body scan.
What are you supposed to do with that? Do you mean as in like he was scanned in and he's like, I don't like how my body looks?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, you know, the scanning was not that great then.
Sure, yeah.
It was not that great, to give him that. It's funny because
this is like 2004, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
But we had a lot of fun with the actors in it, and the scripts. The scripts were great, and there was this guy who played Pope Joe that we found. This older African American man who was a train conductor, and he had this kind of crazy way of talking, like literally like an Amtrak train conductor. That was...
How did you find him?
He was also an actor.
Oh, I see. Right.
And he did a bunch of August Wilson plays, you know, like he was an actor, but he had this incredibly like local way of talking. He's passed away now. But he was so tickled to be in it. But It was a crazy and difficult production. Really, really difficult. But, I've kept on working with those people all for these many years. So,
did you pay much attention to the critical reception of Chronicles and Riddick and your other games, or do you sort of finish and then let it go and don't really look?
I finish and let it go. I can't pay attention to it. I'm too sensitive. I find it soul crushing. People have to tell me. I say, give me a little. How's it going? How's it looking? I can't read the comments. I just would never do anything again. I would never take another risk. I had that happened to me in theater a little bit, like when I was doing my own work and I'd look at all the reviews and then the next thing I'd try to fix what the reviewers pointed out. And I found myself in a box where it's like, I'm afraid to take any risk because someone's going to criticize it. So I don't really pay that much attention to it. Fortunately, you don't in game. Now you're getting more. But in games, most of the time they aren't really. They're like, the acting didn't suck,
Well, I mean, I'm happy to tell you that Chronicles of Riddick went down very well 21 years ago.
I think the thing that we thought was it got better reception than the movie.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
Right? The game was way better than the movie.
Yeah. Okay, Tom, let's come to your fourth game. So this is from 2017, and I guess it was made by the team who worked on Riddick. Tell us, what's the game?
Yeah, it's Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus. This game, there's this thread to the story. It's same people, right? They sent me there, and we had done the first game, and the first game was like, first of all, it was huge. It was a big leap forward that we had this franchise that was, really, a classic, game character. And when they approached me about it, I was like, this is very exciting. And I got the script and I started reading the script. And now I already love the characters, right? Because I'd worked on the first game. And I just started crying. All right, the first couple pages. I'm crying that my beloved character is in this situation. And then I'm turning the pages. I'm literally like, oh my God. What? Oh no. Shit. Are you kidding me? How are they doing this? I literally was shouting as I was reading the script. And game scripts are generally not as dramatically compelling to read until you kind of dig into, what it is and what the gameplay is going to be. The scenes frame the gameplay. But this script, narratively, I was jumping out of my seat. I literally had never read anything so exciting. And I couldn't wait to work on it. It just, and also by that time, the cast, it might have been the first time I did something where we had the same cast going on to another chapter. And so there was this wonderful family feeling of like, how can we bring these characters, keep them going? And also the writers asked the cast, what would you like to see happen to your character?
Wow.
Yeah. It was so wonderful. I was so sad when we wrapped production on it. It's just like, this wonderful adventure is over. Oh my God.
Well, it was another project that was very well received, and you, in fact, personally received a BAFTA nomination for your work on that game, didn't you?
Exactly.
What did that recognition mean to you personally?
Well, first of all, I was blown away that the developers put my name on the nomination along with them. I'll just say a number of game companies I've worked with, I'm lucky to get my name in the credits.
I won't ask you to name and shame, but I'm sure we can guess.
Well, one of them even that I did in the last few years, they spelled my name wrong in the credits.
Oh, no.
They included me as part of their team was such an honor, and I felt so acknowledged. And when they were having the ceremony, I was so tempted to go over, but that's when I was working on Resident Evil 2, and it would take me really like a week to go and come back. And the developers were like, "Well, we can get somebody else." I was like, "Yeah, no." And also, I knew it was kind of looking like we weren't going to win, just the way generally the awards were going. So I dressed up in a tuxedo and went into the sound booth that day in my tuxedo.
Oh, in Los Angeles?
Yes, and kind of streamed the award ceremony in between.
Oh, that's adorable.
When we were working. So that was, it was really fun. I really wished I had been. So I went.
So hang on, you were recording a dialogue for Resident Evil 2, the remake, then,
yes,
while BAFTA's streaming on the
yes,
mixing desk.
Yes.
That's
yes,
brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah, it was funny. But it was such an honor. And, it's like, because there's no awards for directors in video games. I haven't seen any anywhere. I mean, my games have won the Golden Joystick. They've won BAFTAs. They've won, I think Battlefield 3 won some BAFTAs for sound. But I generally don't necessarily feel like I have a part in that. But this was like for the narrative. We didn't win. But just being recognized for the narrative and that they recognized that I had helped shape the narrative was wonderful. It was really, really wonderful, I have to say.
And, awards are one thing, but, of course, it's, I think, more important to feel proud about a particular thing that you've achieved. And so is there a particular performance or scene that you've directed that you're especially proud of?
In that game or in any game?
In any game.
Yeah, I mean, wow. I feel like there's a scene, I have it on my website, tomkeegan.net, where Deborah Wilson, Grace, she is talking to BJ Blazkowicz, and she's breastfeeding her baby with a cigarette, and she's smoking a cigarette at the same time. And she's talking about the horrors of a nuclear blast that happened. The Nazis nuked Manhattan in the fiction of the game. And she's talking about, experiencing that, like this horrible thing.
Yeah, I was. I survived relatively unscathed because I was underground at the time. When I came up, looked like a vision out of Dante's Inferno, you know what I'm saying? I remember Maine people just wandering through the smoke. I remember screams echoing through the bombed out buildings like howling ghosts. And I remember this mother and son. This boy was blindly stumbling through the chaos. His arms were outstretched, calling out for his mama. And the heat from the bomb had melted the skin on his arms, and they just drooped. Like he was wearing a shirt that was a couple of sizes too big. And I remember his mama. She was crawling to get to him. And the half of her body was all gone. It was just...
She's got this cigarette, she's got this baby, and BJ Blazkowicz is there. And the tension in the scene is that he's there to recruit her. And he looks like this, like, white, hamburger American.
What are you thinking in a moment like that, huh?
And she's really checking with him to see if her values are going to be acceptable to him, right? Like, I'm doing me here, and this is what I believe, And are you going to be cool with that, man? And he's kind of like, cute baby, blah, blah, blah. And, then she goes on this horrible monologue. I love that scene. I absolutely love that scene.
Okay, and I suppose, before we come to your final game, on the flip side, have there any, you've talked about a couple in this conversation, but have there been any particular moments of near disaster, technical or creative, that you had to find a way through, other than Battlefield 4?
God, there's been, so many. We had one of the most challenging, oh God, there's a lot, but it was very challenging to work on Battlefield 5, which was about World War II. And there was this segment called The Last Tiger, which was a tank mission. And you're playing Nazis. You're playing German tank officers at the end of the war. And the drama is about the group of men that are in the tank at the end of the war, where they're being lied to by their superiors, and they know what the reality is. And then you've got this gung-ho guy, the young gung-ho true believer, and you've got these two kind of older guys who really understand where it's at. And you've got this conflict, and you've got this sort of shell-shock guy in the middle who becomes the sacrificial lamb. And it was so profound to work on this because all of the eyes that would be on it, you have a big company like EA, you have this huge Battlefield, and it's being made by Europeans, basically. I'm the only American working on it. All the politics and everything around Germany and Nazism and what does it mean now? And it was very, very rich. It was a very, very rich discussion. And also then working with the set, working with this, really, really confined set of this tank, right? And these characters have very, very little to move around staging and during performance capture. I think it came out really well, but I don't know if Battlefield 5 got as much attention as Battlefield 1 did at all. I think it was seen as more of a kind of continuation of Battlefield 1, but that one was challenging.
All right then, Tom. So let's come to your fifth and your final game. This came out last year and was very well received as well, and you were the performance capture director for it. So tell us, what's the game?
So the game is Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. So the same team who do Wolfenstein, my beloved Machine Games. And when they told me they were doing Indiana Jones, I really was flipped out. I was like, no way. Writing just no way. And also, spoiler alert, that the first 10 minutes would be a recreation from Raiders of the Lost Ark. And the first 10 minutes. And then casting the character of Indiana Jones. Who were we going to cast? And I just say, and this isn't a secret because there have been, Troy Baker has done a lot of PR about it. But from the very first moment, I just was like, Troy Baker. I had this intuitive feeling of Troy Baker. And then I went and listened to his voice and various things. I was like, his voice sits in a very similar place as Harrison Ford's. He's a really, really good actor. And then there was a lot of pushback because I said Troy Baker and they were like, no. And first I was like, why? And they were like, well, he's too known for Uncharted and other things, right? And then the pushback was like, no, he's a diva. And I was like, okay, well, but let's give him a shot. Let's give him a chance, right? We went through all these tests with him, and when they ran the waveforms against each other, it was just like, it's a perfect fit. Plus, every other person that I auditioned was doing an imitation of Harrison Ford. Troy Baker was the only one who was actually doing the character inside the voice and the movement, but he really was acting the role.
Was that the first time you'd worked with him?
I had worked with him very briefly on one session on something, but basically, yes.
And then, how was it? Was he a diva?
Once in a while. A few times. But, we got our act together. We had a few good talks. He even talks about it, a few times he got so angry with me. At the end of the day, he'd storm off. And he'd get angry with the whole team when something wasn't the way he wanted it. And I'd say, hey, that's not helpful. Just to say it's not right. A lot of people working on this. You may have legitimate concern, but there's a lot of people's work here that we want to respect. And he came around. He understood. He's so committed. He was so committed to the role. Really, really invested in making it work. Doing that recreation was like, it was almost like two games, because during the recreation, we had to break down all of the camera moves and everything from Raiders of the Lost Ark from the first 10 minutes and try to recreate them in the same timing. And we were using these anamorphic lenses in the reference cameras. So we literally, and a lot of the shots, if you go through the edit, there's a lot of shots that are obviously from the same sequence, but they're edited in a different, the one shot will come and one shot will come a little bit later. And so kind of reverse engineering those and go, we have to get this same shot and then we'll cut it, we'll kind of cut it up. Or, I'm sitting there, I'm running the scene on a monitor and I'm counting literally like a choreographer. And you're going to go reach, 2, 3, and dash. They're in the cave and he does this sort of move where he reaches his arm and he kind of veers under, and there's a beam of light, and then an arrow comes out, and it was all of that. It was just matching it timing wise and the look and the angle and everything, and it really was just like, you don't have a lot of latitude here. You just have to match. It's like recreating Jerome Robbins' ballet. And then once we had done that, then it was like, well, now we're on our own here. But when I saw how they finished the scenes, a lot of times I feel super critical of my own work. But when I watched all the scenes later, I was like, this is really good. I was really pleased with the way it came out.
Right, yeah.
There's this one scene in a confessional where he has this black shirt is sobbing, and Indiana Jones is dressed as a priest, and and the guy says, "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned." And Indiana Jones is like, "Get over with. You're forgiven." And he's like, "No, but Father, I have to say." And turns out he's been having an affair with his mother-in-law, and she's pregnant. And Indiana Jones goes, "You creep!" and he punches him out. It was one of my favorite scenes to do.
It was also the last film that the last performance that Tony Todd gave. A well-known screen actor, was in Platoon and Candyman and Final Destination, all sorts of things like that. And he passed away a month before the game came out. What were your memories of working with Tony?
Tony was amazing. I remember when he did the audition, and it was all over Zoom because we did the auditions during the pandemic.
Right.
Started working on it in 2020. He did these incredible things with his arms and his hands, and I was just like, I want that. I want that guy. I really want that guy. Tony's a really, really serious actor. The technicality of it was interesting to him, but also challenging. He was a nerd, is a nerd, a real sci-fi kind of nerd, a little bit like me. We're sort of from the same era, and he he really loved that nerdy aspect of, being in the suit and bringing this character to life and, doing these scenes like a play. And he's done a lot of plays. He had done a lot of plays. So it was lovely. He was a very generous man and generous, serious performer, very committed. It was lovely. And he and Troy got on so well. They became friends. That was really nice to see.
This has been great, Tom. Let's go through your consoles. So we've got Journey, The Last of Us, Battlefield 1, Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus, and Indiana Jones and The Great Circle. Brilliant console. So Tom, I ask all my guests to give a name to the console so that we can market it to the world. Have you got any ideas of what we might call yours?
I would say, I would call it Human Journey on Earth.
The Human Journey on Earth. Okay, very good. We can do that for you. We'll try and squeeze the logo onto the box. This has been so good. Thank you, Tom, for sharing your memories and your story with us. Last question before I let you go. So, after two decades of all working in games, how do you see the role of performance evolving in the medium in the years to come, if at all?
Well, I'm hoping that it remains human. I'd like to see it remain human. I think there will be more tools available to creators if we use AI in the right way for actors and developers to enhance human performance and work with human performance. I really love the internationalization of it, of getting to work with performers from so many different countries and so many different languages. So I would love to continue to see that grow.
Well, all the best with your current project that you're doing all of the grunts and effort noises for that you were talking about at the beginning. I'm sure
5 projects I'm doing right now.
5 projects. Oh, well, I won't ask you to break any NDAs, but we look forward to playing those as and when they appear. So thanks, Tom. It's been great getting to know you.
Thank you so much, Simon.
Thank you so much to my guest, Tom Keegan, the performance director, who has worked on just so many wonderful, wonderful video games. So grateful to Tom for coming on the show, for telling us about his experiences, for genuinely, authentically just being very loose-lipped, I think, should we put it, just telling us how things really are, when you are directing actors on very big projects like Indiana Jones, how even the best known among the voice actors in the industry can sometimes be divas, the things that can go wrong when you're working on a blockbuster franchise like Battlefield, and all of a sudden they want to cut loads of bits of the story and they're like, can you give us a line that will bridge this massive chunk of that the writers have so carefully put together? All these nightmares. And I'm sure if you work in blockbuster AAA development, you're like, well, yes, that's what it's like every week. But of course, we very, very rarely hear about those things, or at least not until years after the fact, because people have publishing deals and NDAs and all things like that. So, Tom really, I feel, gave us a glimpse behind the curtain. I don't think he said anything controversial. Hope that he's not going to get in trouble for any of the things that he said, because I just feel like it's stuff that people who play video games and follow the industry are aware that this is how it probably works. And so, it was just nice to hear some of those stories. Let's go back. So a few things. If any of you are sort of, New York theatre nerds, then I did find the name of the play that Tom was referencing, that he staged. It was the Sam Shepard play, in which a short one-act play featuring a man in a bath. That was Chicago, apparently, not of course, the musical on Broadway, but Chicago, a one-act play. It's on Sam Shepard's website, sam/shepard.com, and the description is a one-act play. A 20-ish man named Stu sits in a bathtub wearing only a pair of jeans, while his girlfriend Joy makes preparations to leave for Chicago. So I think that is undoubtedly the play that Tom couldn't remember there. What else? Yes. So I was not aware that Machine Games, who made Chronicles of Riddick, Escape from Butcher Bay. How amazing to hear all of those stories, by the way. It sounds like Vin Diesel was a challenge to work with on that project, wasn't it? I mean, we're a long way out from that one. But anyway, I loved that game back in the day, and it was great to hear those stories about it. I wasn't aware of sort of the machinations of these companies in Sweden. Machine Games is a Swedish company. I think so. I was looking into the story here because Tom said that, of course, the people who made Chronicles of Riddick, Escape from Butcher Bay, go on to make Wolfenstein, etc., etc. And I wasn't aware of that, so I looked at some of the backstory. And yes, some of them left, I think, in 2011 during the development of Syndicate, apparently. And 7 senior members of the company, including Hochdahl, I guess that's how you say his name, left to form their own smaller studio. Some of them formed Machine Games to work on their own original games. So yeah, that came out of Starbreeze Studio. Sorry, I'm getting things the wrong way around. Starbreeze was a studio that made Chronicles of Riddick. Some of them leave, make Machine Games, who then go on to make, eventually, Indiana Jones. I think that's right. I think that's all right. Okay. Machine Games have worked on a bunch of great games. I need to get someone from that studio on here. Not only Indiana Jones and The Great Circle, but also, of course, 2 Wolfenstein games. And they've also worked on Doom, Deathloop. I absolutely love that game, Deathloop. I don't think it got enough props when that came out. Skyrim and others as well. So yeah, sounds like a great studio. I'll try and get someone on from Machine Games to hear more of their journey. But it was nice to hear it from the point of view of Tom, the American on the team, as he put it, working on Battlefield, was it 5? That World War II game, and of course, interesting tension he was talking about there when you've got a script coming from American writers and then you're working with European developers from different countries, perhaps some team from Germany, and so they may perhaps have different take on how things are depicted. Very interesting stuff, right? The Battlefield series is not trying to be the most nuanced, perhaps, I think it's fair to say, depiction of the Second World War. Neither is Call of Duty. They're very much entertainment first games, aren't they? But it's just interesting that these conversations are clearly going on behind the scenes. I spoke to Tom at the end of last year, as you may have guessed. If you're watching this on video, that was before I had any facial hair, so that's why it looks a bit different. Perhaps Ed's his new book has been out for a little while. It's obviously, the book is for people who work in performance direction, but as he said at the beginning of that chat, I think there are things in it that are relevant to people who work elsewhere in video games, or wherever with actors or whatever it might be. The book is called The Complete Guide to Video Game Performance Directing. You can pick it up. I think it's quite expensive already, even though it's only been out for 2 months or something, or maybe slightly longer. But anyway, see if you can find a copy, and I think maybe it's on ebook as well, so you should be able to read that. And of course, as Tom said in that chat, you can find out more about his work at tomkeegan.net. That's KEEGAN.net. If you'd like him to performance direct your video game, then get in contact. It's got all of his details on the website. If you'd like to get in contact with me, you can do so at myperfectconsole@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you, your thoughts, your suggestions, your feedback. I'm going to be doing a correspondence episode soon. It's been a little while since we've done one of those, so please do feel free to send in your emails. It's always lovely to hear from you. If you've got some guests you'd like to hear from this year, please do let me know. Loads of you have done that, and I have been booking some guests that you have suggested, so they'll be coming up in future weeks. So yeah, it's always lovely to get those. If you've suggested a guest in the past, they haven't come on yet, it's not because your suggestion has been ignored or it was wrong or anything like that. Just sometimes things don't always work out and we wait for the times to line up. Sometimes people want to wait until they've got something they want to come on podcasts and talk about and promote. So it's, often a matter of getting the right person at the right moment. But yes, I've got all the names that have been suggested by you on a big spreadsheet, and always checking in on those and trying to get them. So that is myperfectconsole@gmail.com. please do head to patreon.com/myperfectconsole as well. If you would like to watch these episodes, that is the place right now where you can get video episodes, at least on time. I am starting to upload them to YouTube as well, just to see if some of the kids on YouTube are interested in these quite in-depth conversations. We'll see. But there's a big lag on those. So if you want to see the episodes, then head to Patreon and you can become a supporter and you'll get those. You also get your episodes early and ad-free. And once a month, you will get a bonus episode with myself and comedian Glenn Moore. We play through a game that has been chosen by one of my previous guests. This month, we're playing through The Last Express, which is a rotoscoped game from the late 90s that was designed by Jordan Mechner, who was the creator of Prince of Persia, worked on Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time, worked on the Prince of Persia movie as well as lots of other things, graphic novels. He was a guest on My Perfect Console, maybe, 12, 18 months ago. And we're playing through that game, myself and Glenn. If you'd like to get involved, play with us, a bit like a book club, then you can do that. And at the end of this month, I'll be putting out a special episode with myself and Glenn, discussing that, maybe incorporating some of your own comments. Please do join us as patreon.com/myperfectconsole. You can also follow along on social media. We're on X, on Blue Sky, on Instagram, and on TikTok now, where you can see reels and whatever they call TikToks. You can get those a week in advance, little previews of the guests that we've got coming up. I pick out some nice choice clips. So please do get on there, give us a follow. Thank you to Big Games Machine, which is the PR agency that just helps run the social media. Hugely appreciate their work as well. Okay, next week, something quite different. My guest next week, a proper artist, a full-on artist who was exhibiting at the Tate last year. So his name is Ed Atkins, and he is predominantly sort of known for his CGI-based work. Since the early 2010s, his art has been exhibited at major institutions. I mentioned there, of course, Tate, but also Tate Britain, but also he's been at MoMA and has taken part in various festivals, the Holland Festival, Manchester International, Venice Biennale. I hope that's how you say it. He's also written books of poetry and memoir, most recently Flower, which he describes as an anti-memoir. He works across video, text and performance. He's big into video games, but a lot of his art incorporates sort of 3D models that you might expect to see in video games that he presents in different ways to generate different effects on the viewer, on the audience. It's a really, really fascinating chat, not like any I think I've ever had before on My Perfect Console. It comes from a completely different perspective and discipline to many of my guests, and yet that connective tissue between his passion for video games and how that infuses his work and his life connects him to all of us, I think, who care and enjoy video games. I hope you will join me next week when I'll be back with Ed, with his 5 games and with one more Perfect Console.